Maya Collins stood in the middle of the Grand Moretti lobby. Her knees were inches from the marble floor. A dozen strangers watched. Phones were already lifted. Leonard Crane stood over her, arms crossed. His voice pitched loud enough to carry to the front doors. "A guest's watch has gone missing from the Ambrose suite," he announced. "And it was found exactly where I expected it to be found." He held up a scuffed silver watch, turning it so the chandelier light caught the glass. Maya's hands trembled in her lap, not from guilt, from the cold understanding that no explanation would matter in this room. Behind her, 5-year-old Noah pressed against her back. He clutched a worn, stuffed fox, one ear stitched crooked from years of love. A bellhop near the front desk leaned toward a coworker. He whispered just loud enough to be heard. "That's the maid with the strange kid, the one who talks to a man nobody can see." Noah did not look up at the whispering. He was staring past his mother, past Leonard, toward the private elevator at the far end of the lobby. Maya turned. She shielded Noah with her body. Her voice dropped even as her pulse pounded in her ears. "He isn't hurting anyone," she said. Leonard's mouth curled into something that was not quite a smile. "Strange children become strange problems," he said, "especially in a hotel like this." A murmur rippled through the gathered staff, some sympathetic, most simply relieved it was not happening to them. Leonard set the watch down on the counter. Theatrical care, like placing evidence at a trial. "Kneel and apologize to this hotel's reputation," he said, "and I will not call the police." Maya looked at the faces around her, guests recording on their phones. Rosa Bell standing near the housekeeping cart, eyes wide, mouth pressed shut. She thought of rent due in 4 days, of Noah's shoes already too small, of every door in this city that would close if she lost this job over an accusation she could not disprove. She knelt. Her knees hit the marble, cold even through her uniform. "I am sorry this happened," she said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her chest. "But I did not take that watch." Leonard opened his mouth to press further. The private elevator doors slid open. A soft chime too gentle for the tension in the room. A man stepped out in a dark coat, unhurried. The kind of calm that made everyone suddenly aware of how loud they had been. Very few people in that building knew his face outside senior management, but every single one of them recognized the silence that followed him. Leonard's posture changed instantly. Shoulders dropping, voice softening into something almost apologetic. "Mr. Moretti," he said. "This is nothing, sir. Just a small staff matter." Dante Moretti did not answer him. His gaze had already moved past Leonard, past the kneeling woman. It landed on the small boy standing rigid beside her. Noah was staring at Dante's wrist, at the antique watch fastened there, its face scratched with age, its leather band worn soft by years of handling. He stepped out from behind his mother. His small voice cut through the lobby's silence. That was Luca's watch. The name landed like a dropped glass. Somewhere behind the front desk, a staff member flinched. Dante went still. The kind of stillness that made even the guests lower their screens. No one in that hotel spoke that name. Not staff, not family, not even Leonard, who had worked there 11 years and learned within his first month never to say it. Noah, unaware of the weight in the room, continued. Plain. "Matter of fact, the way only a child could manage," he said. The second hand stopped because Uncle Dante stopped looking. Maya's breath caught in her chest. She had heard Noah say strange things before. Quiet conversations with a man she assumed lived only in his imagination. She had never heard him say a name. a real name, spoken with such certainty. Dante crossed the lobby in a few slow steps. He crouched down until he was level with Noah's eyes, ignoring the stunned staff, ignoring Leonard entirely. "Who told you that name?" he asked, his voice quiet, edged with something Maya could not identify, something between grief and disbelief. The lobby that had buzzed with cruel whispers now sat frozen, a different kind of tension entirely. Leonard tried to recover his footing, gesturing weakly toward Maya, still kneeling on the floor. "Sir, the boy says all sorts of things. Children make up stories." Dante rose to his full height. He turned toward the small crowd, still holding their phones aloft. "No one posts that woman's humiliation online," he said, his voice carrying without needing to be raised. "Security, take names. Preserve every recording as evidence." 2 security guards moved through the lobby immediately, collecting names, directing several guests to hand over footage rather than delete it. Dante turned back to Leonard, his expression unreadable. "No one humiliates a mother in my hotel and calls it procedure." Leonard's face drained of color. He still did not understand what danger he had just stepped into. Dante extended a hand toward Maya, an unusual gesture from a man who rarely touched anyone. He helped her to her feet. She took it only because refusing seemed more dangerous than accepting, her mind racing to catch up. "Come with me," Dante said. Then he glanced at Noah. "Both of you." Maya hesitated, gathering Noah against her side. "Why?" she asked. "What does he want with my son?" Dante's jaw tightened. "I want to understand how a 5-year-old knows a name that has not been spoken in this hotel in 5 years." He led them toward the private elevator, a detail the staff clearly found more alarming than reassuring. Once inside, away from prying eyes, Dante knelt again to Noah's level, his voice gentler than before. "Tell me about the man with the watch," he said. Noah looked up at him. Plain honesty, the kind only children seem to keep. "The man in the watch said you forgot the red door." Maya's arms tightened around her son. "He says things like that," she said quickly. "He doesn't know what he's saying. Please, he's just a little boy." Dante studied Noah for a long moment. Then he looked up at Maya. "Tell me about his father," he said. Maya's throat went dry. She had not spoken about Noah's father to anyone in years, certainly never to a man who owned the building she worked in. "His name was Luke," she said finally. "Luke Marino. He disappeared 2 weeks before Noah was born. I don't know where he went. I don't know if he's alive. He never explained anything. He just vanished. I raised Noah alone." She swallowed hard. "He used to call the baby little fox before Noah was even born. He'd talk to my stomach like the baby could understand him." Something in Dante's expression cracked, just slightly, just enough for Maya to notice. "Little fox," he repeated quietly. He turned away for a moment, staring at the elevator's polished doors, as though they might offer an answer he wasn't ready to hear. Luca had told him once, years before any of this, a rare, unguarded conversation between brothers, that if he ever had a child, he wanted to call them Little Fox, because foxes survived by being clever rather than strong. Dante had laughed at the time, thinking it a strange thing for a hardened man to say. He was not laughing now. He walked to the small side table and picked up the watch, the one Leonard had placed on the lobby counter earlier. He examined it closely under the light. "This was never Luca's watch," he said. "This is a cheap imitation. Someone planted it in your locker to make you look guilty." He held up his own wrist. The real watch sat there, glass scratched with age, second hand frozen at 17 minutes past 2. "This is Luca's watch," he said. "It has not left my wrist in 5 years." Maya stared at it. Something cold settled in her stomach. Pieces she did not yet understand began arranging themselves in her mind. Dante called for hallway and locker room footage immediately. His voice clipped and businesslike again, though his eyes had not lost the unsettled look from moments before. Rosabelle was summoned to the private floor shortly after, ostensibly as a housekeeping witness. Maya suspected there was more to the request than procedure. Dante turned back to Maya, his voice softer now. "You are not fired," he said. "You are not under arrest. You do not owe anyone in this building an apology." Maya searched his face for the trick she assumed had to be there. "My son is not evidence," she said, her voice sharpening. "He is 5. Dante met her eyes without flinching. "I know," he said. "That is why he is safer with you than with any man in my family." Dante led them to a private sitting room on the executive floor. Its windows overlooked the city, a view Maya had never seen from inside the hotel she cleaned every day. He gestured for her to sit, then took the chair across from her. Noah settled quietly onto Maya's lap, Fox pressed against his chest. "My brother's name was Luca Moretti," Dante began. "5 years ago, just before you say Luke disappeared, I was told Luca had died in an ambush. The family was told he trusted the wrong people and paid for it with his life." He paused, his fingers absently touching the watch on his wrist. "I never fully believed the story," he admitted. "It was too clean, too convenient. But I had no proof, and grief makes a poor investigator." Maya felt the floor tilt beneath her, though she was sitting perfectly still. "You're saying Luke was your brother," she said slowly. "That he was alive this whole time, hiding, and I never knew." Dante reached into a drawer and withdrew an old photograph. He slid it across to her without a word. Maya's hands shook as she picked it up. The man in the photograph wore a different name in her memory, a different life entirely, but his eyes were unmistakable. The same small scar along his knuckle, the same way his head tilted slightly when he laughed, embarrassed at being caught smiling too wide. "He didn't leave me," Maya whispered, more to herself than to Dante. "He was running." Later that evening, a family doctor checked Noah after the stress of the day. Dante noticed a small crescent-shaped birthmark near the boy's shoulder, faint but distinct. He said nothing about it at first. He simply stared a moment too long before looking away. Luca had carried an identical mark as a child, one Dante had teased him about mercilessly growing up. He did not mention this to Maya yet, unwilling to let one detail carry more weight than it should. It was not proof. It was only another thread, pulling at something already unraveling in his chest. Noah, exhausted from the long day, clung tightly to his stuffed fox. He refused to let anyone take it from him, even to be washed. Maya noticed Rosabelle watching the toy with unusual attention. She asked quietly if something was wrong. "I've mended that fox before," Rosa admitted. "Back when Noah was smaller, and it tore at the seam. I remember thinking the stitching along the belly felt odd, like something had been sewn inside rather than just stuffed." Maya frowned. She ran her fingers along the worn fabric until she felt it, too. A small, firm shape hidden beneath layers of stitching that did not match the rest of the toy. With Dante watching in tense silence, Rosa worked the old stitches loose, a tiny voice recorder tucked inside, its casing scratched but intact. Maya pressed the small button with trembling fingers. A familiar, long, buried voice crackled quietly into the room. "Be brave, little fox," the recording said, worn with age but unmistakably warm. If Uncle Dante ever finds you, tell him the red door is under the kitchen." At the end of the recording, Luca's voice dropped lower. "And if you ever see the black rose, little fox," he said, "do not follow it." Maya's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling before she could stop them. Dante turned away from the room entirely, staring out at the city lights, shoulders rigid with an emotion he clearly did not want witnessed. He had searched for a red door beneath the hotel lobby years earlier, following a rumor from an old associate, found nothing but storage closets and dust. Now he understood. Luca had never meant the lobby at all. He had hidden the truth in half measures, scattered across memory and metal and thread. "The red door is not under the lobby," Dante said quietly, almost to himself. "It is under the kitchen." Maya pulled Noah closer, pressed a kiss to the top of his head. She understood at last what her son had been trying to tell the world, in a language only a 5-year-old could offer. "My son is not strange," she said, her voice steadier now than it had been all day. "He just remembered what the rest of you buried." The calm of the private floor did not last through the night. Leonard Crane, panicked by the day's direction, slipped into the security office. He intended to erase the locker room footage before anyone reviewed it fully. He did not know that Rosabelle had already acted. The moment she saw Leonard enter Maya's locker that morning, she quietly copied the footage to her own personal drive. A habit born from years of watching small injustices happen around her without ever having proof to stop them. This time, she finally had proof. When confronted the next morning, Rosa did not hesitate. "I was afraid to lose my job," she admitted to Dante, voice thick with old guilt. She was about to lose her son. The footage was damning and simple. It showed Leonard entering the staff locker room alone, opening Maya's locker with a master key, placing the cheap replica watch inside less than an hour before announcing the theft. It was enough to clear Maya entirely, though Dante suspected Leonard was merely a tool, wielded by someone with far more to lose. His suspicion was confirmed within hours. Nolan, a quiet man who handled matters Dante preferred not to discuss openly, brought forward a financial trail. A shell account, linked to a payment made directly into Leonard's personal account 2 days before the incident. The shell account led, after careful tracing, back to Salvatore Greco, the family's longtime underboss. A man Dante had trusted since childhood as something close to an uncle. Dante sat with that information for a long time before acting on it. When Salvatore arrived on the private floor that afternoon, feigning concern, Dante studied him with new eyes. "You're letting a maid and her strange little boy manipulate you," Salvatore said, settling into a chair without being invited to sit. "The child could be anyone's son. Then why are you so afraid of what he remembers?" Dante replied evenly. Salvatore's expression flickered, just barely. Before smoothing back into practiced calm, he left without answering. Within a day, a memo began circulating quietly among hotel staff and several local gossip blogs. It claimed Maya Collins had orchestrated an elaborate scheme, using her son to extract money and sympathy from Dante Moretti. The narrative spread faster than the truth ever could. Maya went from victim to villain in the eyes of strangers who had never met her. Whispers followed her through hallways she had cleaned for 3 years without complaint. She was called a con artist, a woman exploiting her own child's confusion for personal gain. Comments that stung worse than the original accusation. Because this time they attacked not her honesty, but her love for her son. The danger escalated further the following morning. A man posing as room service staff attempted to approach Noah, while Maya briefly stepped into the hallway. Noah, instinctively wary, backed away. He stared at the stranger's wrist, a small black rose tattoo, visible beneath his rolled sleeve. That flower was on the man. "Daddy said not to follow," Noah said, his small voice carrying more weight than his years should have allowed. Security intervened before anything worse occurred. But the message was clear enough for Dante to understand. Whoever had killed Luca was not only afraid of an old watch or a hidden room. He was afraid of what a small boy remembered. Shaken and furious, Maya told Dante she wanted to leave the hotel entirely, somewhere far from Moretti business, and Moretti enemies alike. Dante did not order her to stay. "You can go," he said, "but if you leave now, in the middle of this, Salvatore will find you before I can protect you from a distance." Maya squared her shoulders despite her exhaustion. "I will not trade one cage for another," she said. Dante nodded slowly. Something shifted in his usually guarded expression. "Then I will leave the door open," he said, "but let me stand between him and your son until you choose." It was, Maya realized later, the first time a powerful man had asked rather than commanded. Something in that small distinction was enough to make her stay. Not out of fear, out of the smallest flicker of trust she had not expected to feel again. 3 days later, Maya agreed to return to the hotel, only under conditions she stated plainly. No room for negotiation. "No one touches my son," she said. "No one questions him like a suspect." Dante agreed without argument. A small but significant concession from a man used to controlling every variable around him. They walked together through the hotel's old kitchen after closing hours. Past stainless counters, gone quiet for the night. Toward a section long used for dry storage most current staff barely remembered. Noah walked slightly ahead, his small hand still wrapped around Maya's fingers, until he stopped in front of a section of wall, partially hidden behind a shelf of unused wine racks. "That door is sleeping," he said simply, pointing toward a seam in the plaster no untrained eye would have noticed. Dante removed the watch from his wrist carefully. He turned the small dial on its side, until the hands aligned at exactly 17 minutes past 2. The moment frozen there for 5 long years. A soft click sounded from within the casing. The back panel sprang open, revealing a small metal key fitted precisely into a compartment no wider than a coin. He pressed the key into a nearly invisible slot hidden within the door's seam. After a long groan of hinges that had not moved in half a decade, the red door swung inward. Dust hung thick in the air of the small room beyond, undisturbed for years. Illuminated only by the flashlight Nolan carried. Inside, carefully preserved, were the remnants of Luca's final investigation. A ledger detailing money moved through hidden channels within the hotel's operations. An audio recorder containing conversations never meant to survive. Photographs showing Salvatore meeting with men outside the family's usual circles. Men known to deal in exactly the kind of betrayal Luca must have uncovered. A hand-drawn map charting old tunnels beneath the hotel. Falsified identification documents bearing the name Luke Marino. The life Luca had built to disappear safely. And finally, a folded letter addressed simply to Dante. Dante's hands were unsteady as he unfolded it, his voice barely above a whisper as he read it aloud. "If you find this, I failed to come home," the letter said. "But if the child is alive, then I did not fail completely." He paused, his throat working against what came next. "Tell Maya I did not leave because I stopped loving her. I left because staying near her made her easier to find. If Noah ever asks what kind of man I was, do not tell him I was brave. Tell him I was afraid, and that I loved them anyway." Dante stopped reading. He folded the letter once along its crease, held it for a moment without speaking. Then he looked at Maya. She had both hands pressed over her mouth, her eyes wet and wide, the way eyes look when something long carried finally has somewhere to land. She had spent 5 years believing she was not worth an explanation, that Luke had simply chosen to disappear rather than stay. Now she understood. He had stayed the only way he could. In a fox made of thread and memory, and a voice preserved in tin. Dante closed his eyes, the weight of 5 years pressing down all at once. He had spent half a decade guarding a grave, while the truth his brother had died protecting had been growing up in a small apartment across the city, mocked by strangers who called him strange for remembering exactly what he was meant to remember. The moment of quiet grief did not last. Salvatore's voice cut through the small room from the doorway, flanked by 2 men Dante recognized from his own security detail. Men he had trusted without question until this very moment. "You cannot make this public," Salvatore said, stepping into the dim light. "It will fracture the family. It already has, the moment you started chasing ghosts instead of running this business." His eyes flicked toward Noah with open contempt. "The boy is a loose end," he said. "Nothing more." Maya stepped in front of Noah instantly, her voice hard as stone. "You buried his father," she said. "You will not bury my son." Salvatore's expression barely changed. "If Dante names this child as Luca's heir, the entire city will know the Moretti family was betrayed from within. Reputation is the only thing holding this family together. A child is not worth that risk." Dante straightened, his voice low and unwavering. "I would rather rule a wounded family than protect a rotten one." He nodded to Nolan, who pressed play on the small recorder Luca had left behind years earlier. Luca's voice filled the small room, steady despite the fear evident beneath it, naming Salvatore explicitly as the man moving money and information to outside enemies within the Moretti operation. The 2 men flanking Salvatore exchanged uneasy glances, their loyalty visibly cracking under the weight of what they were hearing. The realization dawning that they had spent years protecting their brother's actual killer, rather than the family he claimed to serve. One of them lowered his weapon entirely. Stepping back from Salvatore's side, Dante did not order violence. "My brother died in the dark because men like you wanted silence," he said, meeting Salvatore's eyes without flinching. "You will answer in the light." Salvatore was restrained without further struggle, his usual composure finally giving way to something closer to panic. He understood the reckoning ahead would happen in front of the entire family. Not quietly disappeared, the way he had once ensured Luca disappeared. Dante led Maya and Noah back toward the lobby. The same lobby where Maya had been forced to kneel days earlier. Though this time the walk felt entirely different beneath her feet, staff and a few lingering guests gathered. Dante addressed the room directly. Footage played on a screen behind him, showing Leonard planting the false watch, followed by the financial trail connecting him to Salvatore's shell account. Rosa stood beside Maya as a witness, her earlier silence replaced now with clear, steady testimony. Dante also revealed the source of the slanderous memo, the one that had painted Maya as a manipulative schemer, tracing it publicly back to Salvatore's associates, undoing days of damage in a single clear statement. This woman was accused because she was poor enough to be ignored, Dante said, his voice carrying across the marble lobby. Then she was slandered because she became too dangerous to silence. That ends tonight. He turned to Maya then, in front of the same people who had watched her kneel. I am sorry, he said, not because I accused you, but because this hotel taught men like Leonard that a woman like you could be accused without proof. The lobby stayed silent, but this time the silence did not belong to shame. It belonged to accountability. Leonard was escorted out under security's watch. His protests fell on ears that no longer had any reason to listen. Maya stood tall this time, Noah's small hand secure in hers. For the first time since she had walked through those doors years ago as a nervous young hire, no one in that lobby was laughing. A family physician confirmed within days what the letter, the recording, and the memory of a 5-year-old boy had already made clear. Noah was Luca Moretti's son. The test did not create the truth. It only gave a name to what Noah had already carried. Dante made certain the confirmation was treated as exactly that. A final formality, rather than the foundation upon which everything else had been built. It only confirms what he already proved, Dante said quietly to Maya. With nothing but his memory and his courage. Before the wider family gathered to hear the news, Dante spoke plainly. Noah is Moretti blood, he said. But Maya Collins is his mother. No title, no family name, no old watch changes that. He looked at the men gathered in the room. If this family wants to claim him, it begins by respecting the woman who kept him alive when we did not. No one in that room argued. He knelt before Noah in the same private sitting room where they had first spoken honestly days earlier, unfastening the old watch from his own wrist with careful, deliberate movements. He did not hand it to the boy directly. Instead, he placed it gently into Maya's palm, closing her fingers around it with both of his hands. His father left this truth with you, Dante said. It should pass through your hands first. Maya's eyes filled with tears she no longer tried to hide. The weight of 5 years of unanswered questions finally settling into something resembling peace. Noah looked up between the two adults, his small face serious, the way only children manage when asking the questions that matter most. Does that mean I'm not strange? He asked. Dante's expression softened in a way few people in his world had ever been permitted to witness. No, he said. It means you were the only one listening. In the weeks that followed, Dante offered to move Maya and Noah into permanent quarters within the family's private residences, an offer made with good intentions. But heavy implications neither of them ignored. Maya declined the offer to be simply provided for. I don't want to be someone's ward, she told him plainly. I want to work, but not under men like Leonard, and not in a hotel where I have to kneel to keep my job. Dante listened. Rather than insisting, he restructured instead. A new staff protection office was established within the hotel, designed specifically to prevent the kind of unchecked accusation that had nearly destroyed Maya's life over a lie. Rosabelle was promoted to oversee the housekeeping department in full. Her years of quiet integrity finally recognized rather than ignored. Maya was offered a position as training supervisor, tasked with protecting employees who, like her, had little power to defend themselves against false accusations from those above them. She accepted, on her own terms, in her own time. Months later, Noah stood in the same lobby where he had once been mocked for talking to a man no one else believed existed. His small hand resting comfortably in Dante's, his mother standing close beside him with quiet, unshakable pride. In a small glass case within the family's private floor, Luca's watch rested now, not as a trophy of grief, but as a reminder of what had nearly been lost and what had ultimately been found. Noah had asked once quietly if his father could still hear him. Dante had thought a long time before answering. "He left you everything he wanted to say," he told the boy. "In a fox, in a door, in a name you carried without knowing why. That is not silence. That is someone speaking from the only distance he had left." Noah had nodded slowly, the way children nod when they understand something they will spend years growing into. He pressed the fox tighter to his chest and said nothing more. He did not need to. "I spent 5 years guarding a grave," Dante said, looking down at the boy who carried his brother's memory forward without ever meaning to. "I should have been guarding what my brother left alive." They had mocked Noah Collins as a strange little boy, a boy who talked to memories no one else could see. But when he named the dead brother of the most feared man in the city, the Moretti family learned the truth. Sometimes a child is not strange at all. Sometimes he is the last witness, brave enough to remember. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe, so you never miss one like it. Was it Maya refusing to let her son be called strange? Was it Noah remembering his father's truth? Or was it Dante finally realizing what his brother left alive? Your comments help us keep creating stories about justice, family, and the people the world should have believed sooner.